Hello, and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun this afternoon, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick trip over to Nosara, Costa Rica, and check in with my buddy Craig Sutton because they're in the middle of a hot marlin and sailfish bite. I want to hear about that. Then we're going to come back to Florida. We'll go to the northeast corner with Captain David Voorhees, find out what this northeast wind has brought us. Man, have we had a change in weather in the last week or so. So we're going to watch this wind pattern, and I want to know what the guys do when the water cools down. We'll check it out in East Central, all the way down through the Keys, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle. We'll get everybody's fishing report, but more importantly, I want to know what the pros do to help them catch more fish in the wintertime. We get them even here in Florida. They don't last real long, but there's still wintertime, and the winter for 2022 is officially here. So let's get it started first with a quick side trip to Nosara, Costa Rica. Oh, let me take this heavy jacket off. We finally have arrived in Nosara, Costa Rica, where it's always warm and 76 degrees and clear skies. Craigie, how are you?
I'm good, Ricky, but it's usually in the mid or low 80s.
Well, yeah, but all right, get picky now. Get picky. Yeah, I'll take it. It's amazing to me how it never seems to get very, very hot, and certainly never seems to get very, very cold. How's the fishing over there?
It's been real good up until today. Today we had just a horrible day.
Really?
We had 4 boats fishing, and I think the total catches was a couple beneath.
Ooh, yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, but yesterday was real good. Dan Johnson, a guy fishes with us, I don't know, probably 20 times a year. He got a marlin yesterday, sailfish, a couple nice mahi, and a couple yellowfin. So, I'm sure. I hope that tomorrow it goes right back to fighting again. But even Superman's got his kryptonite.
God, it's funny how they take days off. They do it here. They do it everywhere, Craig. And for me, it always seems to be the worst possible timing. If I've got somebody I really want to catch fish, that's the day they choose to take off.
Oh, of course. But, all last year, we never had those hiccup days. And this year, this is the first hiccup day we've had.
Yeah.
Unless we had them and we just didn't fish that day. But we're fishing pretty much every day, at least 2 boats, not 3 or 4. So, it is what it is. It's fishing.
Yep. You say this guy goes with you 20 times a year. Where does he live?
He lives in Hatteras. He's a realtor. And he comes for 2 weeks at a time, sometimes 3 weeks. He goes back and forth. And he's just a hoot. The guy's a hoot. He really is. It's just, and he'll book the boat. He'll pay for everything. And then he grabs 4 or 5 locals and takes them fishing with him. The guy's such a great client. He really is. It's just anything he wants to do, I'm all for. I support it. The guy's, he knows how to travel. And he's very respectful. He's
also a very successful realtor. I can promise you that.
Well, he's in that Wanchese area.
Yeah.
And Hatteras, which has seen a boom, just like a lot of places, that not to be political, but aren't restricted as some of these other places. But, they've seen a big influx of people the last few years there for sure.
Understood. Craigie, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. Hopefully I'll have a first-hand account. I'm going to head down there Wednesday. I'm going to go catch me a couple marlin.
Bring me a piece of tuna, will you?
All right, brother man, I will.
Thank you, Craig. Up in Northeast Florida is where we're going to stop next. That means we'll be checking in with David Voorhees. David, have you got a jacket on?
A jacket and a windbreaker.
Whew. And I tell you, that wind's cranking, isn't it?
It is, and it's going to get worse. And I tell you, that's the one thing, when you look at Northeast Florida and you look at the rest of the state, the one big different thing we have up here is sort of inconsistent weather. Our weather is constantly changing, especially this time of year. We see these cold fronts come down and can really give you a fluctuation in temperature that you don't see in South Florida. Mm-hmm. And not just air temperature, but water temperature. So, up here in Northeast Florida, we can, our water temperatures, can go as, I think the lowest I've ever seen them was somewhere in the 40s.
Wow.
And then, the highest I've ever seen them is actually 91, 92, somewhere around there.
That's a huge swing, David.
Yeah. And you don't see that in a lot of places. We have those really, really extreme temperature changes in water, and like that you don't see anywhere else in the state, in any place for that matter.
David, when we get into a situation like this where we've got rapidly dropping water temperatures and a lot of fluctuation, when it cools off, it's got to change your approach, doesn't it?
Well, you got to constantly be changing, Rick. I mean, yes, it does. And there's things we do in the wintertime, that's going to improve your catch. One of the things I tell my clients is you definitely go slow. You also, make sure your fluorocarbon line is fresh and new, your leader, and go with a little bit longer leader this time of year. I'll actually sometimes have a very long leader, sometimes as long as almost 3 feet long on my leaders. And, a lot of guys will actually go with a lighter line so they can make longer casts because, the fish aren't going to give you that hard fight that you get in the springtime when that temperature's, let's say, up in the 70s. When that water temperature is a little cold, those fish don't quite give you that fight, the red drum. But so some guys will actually go to a smaller line, a lighter line, so they can get those long distances. A lot of the captains I know, and we've done seminars on this, on how to fish the different weathers. And one of the things we talk about is, I like to go to a black jig head a lot of times this time of year. I don't want the bright colors. The waters really clear up, really get clean. So I really don't want anything that's going to stick out, say white or chartreuse. So I'll go with the dark, the black color. And it sort of blends in because we have a lot of snails up in this area, and they tend to be little black snails that we see all over the place, and they tend to blend in with that. And I change my baits from summertime, which I'm normally using shrimp if I'm using live bait, to actually mud minnows. And this time of year, when you're around in the creeks, the only bait you really see around the oysters are the little mud minnows.
Now, and, David, all these light leaders and long casts and all, what we want people to understand, I think, is that our water's a lot clearer in the wintertime. Is that right?
A lot clearer. It will actually get really gin clear where, I've seen it as, where you 3-4 feet down, you can see the bottom. And, that's really clear for us. We don't have that clear water that the rest of the state normally sees because we have a lot of the phytoplankton, the zooplankton and stuff like that is in our water. So in the wintertime, those die out. The water gets cold and all that dies down. So it really cleans the water up. And these fish get tougher even though it's nice to be able to see a bunch of fish, with the lower water temperature, the high visibility, it makes for tougher fishing for the inshore guys, especially in shallow water. So you got to really slow things down. You really got to move slow and don't give up. I mean, these fish go from where they have to eat in the summertime as much as twice a day to now in the wintertime, these fish are only feeding once a week maybe. Mm-hmm. So, you could come up to a bunch of fish and they're just not going to eat. Don't waste time on fish. I've found it's better to keep moving, especially in my line of work, Rick. You got to keep the customers happy. Now, if I was just a weekend warrior going out on my own, I might sit with those fish for an hour or 2 hours and hopefully get a bite or two because I can see these fish. I know they're big reds. I know they're nice slot-sized reds. So I might spend a little more time. But with clients, you have to keep it moving. You have to keep the action going. And sometimes, you know, hey, after 15, 20 minutes, I can't get these fish to bite. I give up on them. I go find another bunch of fish. And sooner or later, you know, doing that, running and gunning, you're going to find the fish that are going to eat for you.
David, that's great, and that's great advice.
And one other thing, let me add one other thing, Rick, to this before we go, is another thing too. A lot of guys, and I see, they don't take into consideration, and this is something I've learned recently over the past few years, is that when I'm up on the flat and I'm not seeing anything, I'm not seeing fish moving, I'm not seeing puffs of mud, I'm not seeing bait, the birds aren't there, and there's just a lack of life on the flat, you know what? I sort of, after 2 or 3 flats and it's the same thing, I start looking in deep water. I feel like these fish, if they're not on the flat, they didn't go very far from where they might have been 2 or 3 days ago when you saw these fish. And now you come up onto this flat and they're nowhere to be found. These fish are probably out in deeper water. So, you know, a lot of guys, they spend all their time fishing way back in the creeks. They'll hit these shallow waters, and they spend all their time, you know, fishing the shallow water, and they spend very little time fishing deep water. And I think if a lot of anglers started doing that, they bring their catch ratio up, I guarantee you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. I hope things ease up this week a little bit. We get a little less wind, and you can get back on the water. We appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely, Rick. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, David. Captain David Voorhees from Northeast Florida. Time to hit East Central. That means it's Jim Ross time. Jim, how are you?
Doing fantastic this week, Rick.
Good. Do you get some fish to bite?
We have had an epic bite going on with this Indian summer, or whatever you want to call this thing that we've had the last couple of days. And now that the cold front pushed through, the sheephead bite has even gotten stronger than it was before when the water temperatures were a little higher.
Oh, good deal. Now, you talk about sheep's head this time of year. That makes me think fiddler crabs. Are they selling fiddlers down there?
No, that's the funny thing. I've been trying to catch triple tail and black drum and speckled trout and various other things throwing shrimp on a jig head.
Right.
But I keep catching sheephead.
Good. Okay.
A good problem to have. I mean, you know, if you're looking for something that eats good, obviously the triple tail is way up there, but, you know, I wouldn't put sheephead too far behind a triple tail.
Sheephead ain't bad. Sheephead ain't bad. Just a word to the wise. All of your crustacean eaters, triggerfish, sheep's head, triple tail, black drum, anything that dines exclusively on crustaceans, chances are it tastes pretty good.
You got that right.
All right, so what are you catching besides sheep's head?
Well, mixed bag. You know, black drum, speckled trout, lots of small jacks, lots of small bluefish. Now, this is out on the coast, you know, out on the nearshore waters and at the inlets. We've got some really big bull reds that have been running around in the Canaveral Bight area and also down at Sebastian Inlet. They've been biting better on the incoming tides than the outgoing tides. Spinner sharks are still throughout the region. You know, king mackerel out on the reefs. There really hasn't been a bad bite of anything. We've even had a couple of cobies showing up. So, yeah, overall, it's been a spectacular last 4 or 5 days of fishing.
Oh, that's great. Now, I got bad news for you. I'm 100 or so miles north of you. There is a northeast wind coming that you are not going to enjoy tomorrow. You can probably plan on the day off.
I'm going to be cutting grass tomorrow, you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it looks like not a great week, but I don't think it's going to be anything major for a long-term thing. I think your bite will probably go right on. Jim, I'm encouraged by the number of cobia we're seeing through the wintertime this year. I'm hoping that's a good sign and we got better days to come, but I guess we'll find out soon. As always, thank you for a great report, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
I look forward to it, Rick. It's a great time to get out on the water, and everybody needs to be fishing.
I agree with you. Thank you, Captain Jim. Let's move on down to Alamorada and check in with Brandon Storin. Captain Bean, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Rick. How you been?
Been fine, son. Been fine. Tell me about the fishing in Alamorada.
Yeah, so we're having some warmer water down here that we usually that we're not used to getting this time of year. So we're having a lot of good tarpon bites. You're at the right place, right time. We're getting some really big tarpon. They think it's springtime. Water's about like 74, 75 degrees back there. Snook have been very active. Not too many red drum, but you get a couple drum. And as far as offshore, we've been getting some really big blackfin tunas at the edge of the reef. Some nice muttons, and it seems like more sailfish are making their way down. Definitely, I went offshore one day this week, and we saw a lot of sailfish sprays, caught a lot of big tunas, did a couple mutton drifts. That was good. Some nice big yellowtails on the edge of the reef. So it's been good on both sides of the fence. But, yeah, it's just really cool how here we are in January, and you get a couple really big tarpon in a day. It feels like springtime.
Well, I got news for you. There's cold on the way. It is coming down the coast, and I don't think it's going to die before it gets to you. So we might be looking at much different conditions next week than we are. But the one thing about Islamorada, your winter is certainly the calmest of anywhere in Florida.
Yeah, well, hey, if cold weather's coming, let it come down and bring some red drum with it, please.
Gotcha. Well, we got plenty of them up here, so I'm sure there's some on the way. Captain Brandon, we appreciate it as always, and please tell me we can check with you next week.
Always.
Our thanks to Brandon Storn for a great Islamorada report. Now, let's check in with one Steve Dahl over in 10,000 Islands. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing really good, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's cold up here in Northeast Florida, and it looks like it's going to stay that way for a while. Not cold down there, is it?
It's not really. I mean, we're hitting, fronts are, relative, but our bite's been a little off this past week for sure. We had a little bit of a cold front, so just not, I would rate it probably like a 7 right now as opposed to the normal 8s and 9s we've been having. And we've been really blessed with, great conditions, but for whatever reason, our bite's just a little off this week. Redfish and snook in the backcountry are still doing okay. The trout have kind of thinned out a little bit, and maybe it's just because of all the fishing pressure. It's real popular time of year down by us. But reality is, it's been a little slow for us, and we've had some winds and that have kind of kept people offshore. But for the most part, it's been the bite's been a little on the light side.
Steve, you said that, and you're right, fronts are relative. What's a big temperature drop in Connecticut is not a big one. Right. It's not a big one here, and it's even less by the time it gets down to you. But you mentioned fronts and the temperature dropping. What do you change about your approach, and how different is your fishing in the wintertime?
I've always looked at, when I'm fishing any type of post-front pattern, even relative to any time of the year, but in particular, especially in the winter, it seems to affect fish. After a front kind of comes through, those last, couple days afterwards, those post-front conditions, you generally have a little bit higher winds. You have obviously cooler temperatures. It cools down the water a little bit. And my tried and true is just a slow and low, as I like to call it. And fish very low in the water column. Those fish are usually, not roaming around a lot. They're kind of pegged to the bottom, and bottom can be anywhere from 2 feet to, all the way to 15 feet of water, depending on what you're fishing for in our area. But the reality is, you're really, if you're thinking you're fishing slow down is really the reality of it. And it really, you're not going to, I've talked a lot in the past about being efficient and, covering water. And that's my style of fishing. I like to cover as much water as possible in a given day. And that's why I like to throw artificials a lot, just because I think I can cover more water, get more casts in, and it just becomes a numbers game to me. But the reality is in the wintertime, you need to just stop and hedge your bets on some of your favorite spots. Maybe you only get 2 or 3 or 4 of those spots in any given day, but if you really methodically slow down and thoroughly fish the area, you're probably going to do quite well. So it's going to test your patience, but the reality is, fish's metabolism is just not spiked. They're kind of hunkered down, and you got to entice them. They're neutral to negative fish, and you have to entice them. And the reaction bite is not the way to do it. Their metabolism is just not in the mode to chase. So I like to kind of go with simple things. I don't like throwing live bait. I don't think they really want to chase down live bait. So shrimp is really a nice way to go.
Okay.
I like to go with scented things, whether it be a cut piece of mullet, a cut piece of ladyfish. But my number one thing is in our area is a brown bucktail jig with a thumbnail sized piece of shrimp on it. And that'll catch just about anything in our area in the wintertime. Trout, redfish, snook. I've caught some of my biggest snook out of my boat on a brown bucktail jig with a thumbnail sized piece of shrimp. And too many people want to put a whole shrimp on there. It's just not going to work. It doesn't look natural. That little piece of shrimp is more for scent than anything else. So get it right on the bottom, hop it a couple times, let it flutter back down, and that's the way to do it.
Now, Steve, when you say live shrimp, when you say shrimp, are you talking about a cut live shrimp, or are you talking about a frozen shrimp?
Yeah, so I've tried both, and it definitely makes a difference to have the live shrimp and then cut them up. I literally, December through February, I'll literally sit in my boat as I'm waiting for my clients to arrive, and I'm taking some of the more oversized shrimp that I'm getting from the bait shop. I'll take those first, and I'm literally cutting them into pre-made thumbnail-sized shrimps, and I throw them in a little baggie, put them on ice, and that's kind of how I approach my day. I usually have probably 25 pieces of that at the ready, and then cut them up, further as I go throughout the day. But that's an everyday thing for me for a good part of 90 days in the wintertime.
Gotcha. Oh, they smell different than frozen shrimp. There's no doubt.
They do, for sure.
And I think there's more attractive. That's a great tutorial on wintertime fishing. One more quick question before we go.
Sure.
Steve, up in North Florida, and I know in Central Florida, our water gets a lot clearer in the wintertime. Does that happen down there, or not so much?
It does. It definitely does. The north winds kind of push, a lot of water out of the bay and hold up tides a little bit too. So that allows, for a little bit of clearing. So we don't have like strong south winds, pushing muddy water into our area as much as we do in like the summertime. But as we talked maybe a week or two ago, we talked about the sight fishing opportunities, and that's huge in our area in the wintertime. Take advantage of the really low daytime tides. And if you've never done that before, go with someone who's a little bit more, versed to that, has a technical polling skiff, and, that is a lot of fun. Nothing better than, seeing fish in crystal clear water in, a foot of water and trying to catch them. A lot of fun.
Got it. Thanks. Steve, thank you so much. We appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Captain Steve Dahl. Let's get a word from D.O.A. Lures. Yes, I can promise you it's finally cooling down in Northeast Florida, and that means the water is cooling off too. And just like the fish always do, the biggest and baddest of so many species we fish for will soon be holding in deeper water in an attempt to cool off. You name it, if it feeds deeper in the water column, it can't refuse a D.O.A. Terrorize. It dives straight down, and it crawls across the bottom with an action that no deep feeder can resist. Whether it's crappie deep under some lily pads or a tarpon rooting around the bridge pilings, D.O.A. makes a size and color Terrorize that they just can't say no to. Flashing that big bright eye in front of any bottom-feeding game fish is just unfair. Maybe that's why they call D.O.A. Lures the unfair advantage. That means it's West Central time, which belongs to one Ray Markham. Ray, how's you fishing in West Central?
Well, we got a potpourri of all kinds of good stuff going on here.
A veritable potpourri you do, huh?
A veritable potpourri. Not the same kind you see in the bathrooms or anything, but we've got a good fishery going on with inshore waters in specific areas. The snook bite has been on fire this week for the guys fishing on the east shore of Tampa Bay. Lots of big redfish and big snook up north. I say north, anywhere from Clearwater Harbor north up to Hernando Beach. And they're still catching snook up there as well. We got some changes that are on the way, though. We're just having a part of the front moving through, but I think we got a backup coming behind that. and it's going to change some things. But the guys that are getting out offshore just prior to this front here, they are just waxing the blackfin tuna.
Oh.
I mean, lots of them from what I'm hearing. And they're catching some wahoo out there as well, and as well as some dolphin. So a little bit of everything. Tuna, dolphin, wahoo, mangrove snapper, lane snapper. Gosh, I don't know what more you could want.
Wow, that's fantastic offshore fishing. Has the cold weather affected your inshore fishing yet?
It has to some degree, but it has been like a yo-yo effect. When we have a front coming in and passing, it stirs up the water, it cools it down. But as soon as the front pass and the winds subside, the water gets ultra clear again, which we're having to downsize some leader sizes. I say by size, by diameter, going down to as much as 15 as opposed to 25, which is what my standard leader. I get so many snook in the area that I have to have something big enough to ward off the fraying of them.
And that's because your water gets clearer that you have to get down to a smaller leader to get the bite?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, that, and I also increase the length of the leaders. You know, a lot of the summertime, spring and fall, water's got a little bit of a tinge of color to it. And I can get by with, 18 inches a leader with no problem. You get on a good snook bite sometimes and you're down to 6 inches and you don't even want to bother to retie them because they're eating so fast.
Yep.
But yeah, I'll go up to 24 to 36 inches a leader in the wintertime, and I'll drop it down to about 15. I'm mainly targeting flounder, trout, things like that during the wintertime versus a snook so much. But if I do target a snook, I'm doing it on the warmer days, and I am definitely throwing a D.O.A. shrimp. Gotcha. There's nothing that will beat a shrimp, artificial or live or otherwise, this time of year. So crawl it on the bottom.
I agree with you 100%, and I also think that one of the reasons that the D.O.A. shrimp is so effective this time of year is it makes a very subtle entrance into the water, a very small splash.
Well, that certainly is one of the things, but the other thing here is when the weather does turn cold, a lot of the bait fish that are on the flats leave, and they go out in deep water out in the Gulf. So I say deep water. It may be 20 feet of water where most of these fish, these bait fish will run out to, but they're just not available inshore so much. So that forces the snook, redfish, trout, and whatever else is left in the bay to head into the backcountry waters and pick up killifish and mud minnows and that kind of thing. And if there's some pinfish left, a few pinfish, but mostly it's shrimp.
Gotcha.
So,
Ray, great report. We appreciate the heck out of it. And please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yeah, buddy, the good word, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be here.
All right, well, go find your socks because you got cold weather coming. Talk to you later.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Captain Ray Markham. That means it's time to check in with one of my all-time favorite podcasters, my deer hunting brother up in the Big Bend, Captain William Toney. I finished the season with the exact same number of bullets I started with.
Well, yeah, I could say that, but, you know, Rick, I did miss a buck, so I'm one less than you. So I was told, and actually my father up where we hunt towards Cedar Key, he missed a buck, and that would have been Saturday afternoon. So the first time in our camp history, we're going to have a father and son shirt tail cutting ceremony around the campfire.
I'll be darned. But you feel like it was a clean miss, huh?
Well, yeah, I was, you know, we have like kind of like a trowel around the campfire, and I'm already building my case. And I had some of my cousins telling me the shot was 30 yards, but after talking to my father, which I was not there, he said it was about 180 to 200 yards and plus shooting down a road. So he waited for the buck to move off into the ditch on the side of the road before he shot. So, you know, there's some discrepancies. I don't want to try to fight it, and we're going to see if we win this case, but other than that, I think our shirt tails will be hanging on the wall of shame at the trotter camp.
I think that's probably true. All right, let's talk a little fishing. How's it been this week?
You know what? The trout bite has been strong as it could be. It's held through all through the winter, which I guess we just kind of didn't really have. Now, you know, speaking with us tonight, we did have a front come through, and it looks like tomorrow may be a little bit snotty. So we may get the water to drop a little bit to push some of those fish back up into our rivers. But today out there in the Gulf, here off of Homosassa, our water temperature was 71 degrees, which is pretty warm for January. Mm-hmm. So if this front is if it has some duration, it may drop that Gulf temperature enough to push some fish in the river. We have a bunch of our snowbirds and people here around the Big Bend area that come down for the winter. And their big question is, you know, I'm not catching anything in the river in front of our house that we rent. And I'm like, because it's not been cold enough. Right. It has to get cold enough to drop that water temperature down in the low 60s, upper 50s in the Gulf to push those trout and redfish up in our rivers. And it just has not happened this year. So, you know, that maybe this might be the front to do it. Or they just may hole up on the outside and ride it out because, you know, it doesn't look like we're going to have a frost. In fact, the only frost that I can think of we've had this year was back in early November. And normally in our area, we'll get 2 or 3, sometimes 5 or 6 a winter on the Big Bend, and we just have not seen that.
I think they're coming, William. They're calling for light frost around Jacksonville. I think they're coming. I think by the time you and I talk next week, you will have seen more of wintertime. And for us over here on the East Coast, and I would imagine for you too, that always means slow everything down a little.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and that's what I tell folks and anglers, what you want to do if you're going to fish in the rivers or some of those holes on the backcountry, don't be pulling that bait through the water like it's, in April or, September. Slow it down a little bit. If you're hitting bottom, pick it up a little bit. But if you're fishing 8 feet of water, keep that lure somewhere around that water contour around 3 foot mid-water column, somewhere inside that hole, working it slow. And some of our better lures are like the Meridians and things that suspend some of those hard plastics. And you could do that too with the D.O.A 5.5-inch jerk baits, fishing those little troughs and things, and that bait, you can work it slow and just twitch it enough, and it'll still spin, and you'll get those trout.
Does your water clear up in the wintertime?
It does. And I was thinking about that today. And sometimes in the summer when the water gets really warm, you get all that nutrient and everything in it, but our water clarity has been very good lately. In fact, we were talking today in the boat, and the lady angler had to ask me about if we were sight casting today, what color shirt should I wear? And I was saying, well, definitely not like blaze orange or, neon green, because being real slick calm and everything and being very clear water, I always tell people it's like, well, look at your wading birds in your area. What color are their feathers? You got white, you got the herons that are gray and blue, and things like that. And you look up at the sky, so imagine yourself as a fish. When you're looking up, if you see neon orange or neon green, it's probably not the best color on a calm day. You want to wear earth tones that match the sky. And especially in the Gulf, you're not up against a tree-lined bank, so camouflage really don't work. So you need those, sky colors.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thanks so much, William. What a great report. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be right here, and I tell you what, that backstrap is coming. We still got 2 more weeks. We had talked about it last week.
That's right.
Yeah, so this is what I found out, Rick, was that in our area here along the Big Bend, and depending on what zone you are in, now most management areas have closed because their management area is closed the week after New Year's. But if you have private property or in a pay-per-use management area, they give you those 2 extra weeks, the same as private property. So we have until January 24th, actually 23rd, which is a Sunday, to get it done.
Well, I want to see deer hunting go all the way through January everywhere. We just don't. This whole year, William, our season in Georgia's closed now. We never got cold.
It never did.
I've got a heavy jacket to hunt in. Still sitting in the closet, been there all year. My gloves, never put them on.
It makes a good seat in your tree stand. You can fold it up and sit on it. It keeps your butt from getting tired.
That's about right. Thank you, Cap. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, bud. Have a good evening.
Captain William Toney. Our thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. Now let's move into Northwest Florida, where my guess is it's starting to cool off a little bit, and check in on one Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick, I'm doing just fine, but we passed a little chill. We're cold here.
You got your socks on, do you?
I do. I have my socks on. I've been wearing pants. I got chased on my leg.
Holy smokes, how about that? All right, well, that's got to have brought a change to your fishing. Tell me about your fishing.
Well, offshore, it slowed down, combination of stuff, cold weather, rough weather, end of the year, so the state's given us very little to choose from offshore. A lot of concentration has been onshore near on the beach, on the docks, things like that, and hitting that tide just right seems to have, it's on fire if you get it at the right moment.
Yeah, what are you catching?
We're getting redfish just under and up into the slot. We're getting speckled trout. We've got black drum. We've got some pompano. We've got sheep's head. We've got black snapper. So it's been, we've been having a good time. Nothing to write home about, but we've been catching a lot of fish.
Oh, that's really good. No, you can fish from land in any kind of weather, can't you?
That's true. That's true. And you know what? You don't have to make that long, cold run either.
don't have to burn that $4 a gallon gas either.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. I understand. Well, that sounds like good fishing, quite honestly. I tell you what, this time of year, we'll sure enough take that. Now, Kevin, does your water get a lot clearer this time of year?
It does.
Yeah.
Our area around here, because, we get a lot of influence, as you guys do, from the rains up in Georgia and the Carolinas. So we don't have the tannin in the water along the beach, and the everything just seems to clear up as it cools down.
Yeah. I think the cool water kills some of all the microorganisms in the water too, because the problem here is we get to see a lot of fish in the wintertime. The problem is when you see them, they've already seen you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will tell you this past summer was probably the cloudiest overall the entire summer that I've seen.
Huh. I'll be darned. Cap, we appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Captain Rick, we'll be back with bells on.
I'm counting on you being peachy. Thank you, Kevin.
I'm always peachy.
Captain Kevin Lanier from Northwest Florida. Hey, before we head out the Panhandle to take a wrap on this, let's check in with Shimano and Strike Zone. Funk and Wagnalls define symmetry as similar parts combined in perfect balance. Shimano and Strike Zone define symmetry as the perfect spinning combo for whatever your target is. You can't beat the balance and performance of Shimano Symmetry spinners for freshwater and inshore saltwater fishing. Outfits like Symmetry are the reason for shopping at Strike Zone. Not only are the Shimano Symmetry spinners the perfect balance between rod and reel, how about this? You can get them at Strike Zone for $99. One of the biggest mistakes most anglers make is fishing outfits that are out of balance. If you try to balance your own Shimano outfit, you can almost never get the most out of your cast inshore or put the maximum pressure on a Sea Monster offshore. The symmetry between Strike Zone and Shimano, the perfect balance for all your fishing needs. Okay, now we're going to head out the Panhandle. Now, that's an area very similar to Northeast Florida where colder water as we get into mid-January through February makes a lot of difference in the fishing. Captain Tyler is starting to chill down out there a little bit, isn't it?
Yep, it really is, Rick. And, we're definitely settled into our wintertime fishing. It kind of came quick for us, but we've made it there.
I understand. I've got my socks on myself. Let me ask you, does your water get clearer in the wintertime?
Yeah, it really does. Especially in the Intercoastal Waterway, we call it Santa Rosa Sound. It's the body of water that connects us to Destin, Panama City. You just keep going on down the line there, it just settles down. We get a lot of north wind, kind of blocked by the land, and we get some nice, not as much rain. We get nice, clear, crystal clear water. Definitely a lower temperature as well, but yeah, a lot of clear water in our sound for sure.
How do your tactics change as your water gets cold?
Yeah, so this is something we talk about quite a bit. When it's wintertime fishing, especially inshore, fishing for trout, redfish, that kind of stuff. We always talk about slowing down your retrieve. A slower all around, a presentation altogether. You want to work an area a little more thorough. Not going to rip a jerk bait super fast. Everything's slow. Let stuff settle, let stuff kind of sink down, and just really, take your time when you're fishing.
I see. Okay. Now, a lot of the guys have mentioned going to lighter and fluorocarbon leaders in the winter because there's less microorganisms. Is that a factor out there? Do you need lighter leaders in the winter?
It's not something I focus on. When I'm inshore fishing, I just pretty much stick to 15 or 20 pound fluorocarbon.
Okay.
Trout and red fishing, and I just stick with that. We always do talk about if the bite is slower or whatever, definitely move up and down, down in your size of leader. But I don't make that a wintertime thing or not. It's just in general. If the bite's slower and you can see the fish, drop your leader size. Gotcha.
Now, you do more artificial or natural bait in the wintertime?
Yeah, wintertime, it's more artificial for me for sure. A lot of our natural bait where we are, it leaves,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our finger mullet are way up in the creeks. They're kind of hard to get to. They're in, closer to the freshwater stuff. All of our pilchards and thread fins and all that kind of stuff are moved out of the area. A lot of our menhaden are gone. So it's artificial is definitely the easier option. The only other thing we use live shrimp sometimes, but the artificial just seems to be more effective in the wintertime for us.
Gotcha. Slow it down, and I think it's probably important. I know over here at least it's important for us to make longer casts and be further away from the fish because if we can see them, they can see us. You agree with that?
Yep, definitely. And then one other thing we always talk about, wintertime we're off the flats, we're fishing in bayous, canals, and we're fishing deeper water. So we want to focus more on the deeper channels. Like in the summertime, we're throwing around docks and close to structure. Well, the wintertime, we want to fish the deep channels, the deep pockets, the deep holes, and we're away from the bank and away from structure. So Perfect. That's one major difference too for the wintertime for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Captain Tyler. We appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be here, Rick. We'll see you.
All right, Captain Tyler Massey from the northwest corner out in the Panhandle, and that ties us up for another week. We learned to slow down in the wintertime. As this starts to get cold, it starts to slow down. Now, we had some good reports. Jim Ross talking about cobia at the Cape. I tell you, I caught 3 cobia myself last week off Jacksonville. Maybe cobia are starting to have a better year. Maybe 22 is going to be better. We'll see. Kingfish still on the reefs on the West Coast. That blew me away. Kingfish in the surf on the East Coast, right around the Cape again. That I couldn't believe that. Down south, everybody's talking sailfish. The sailfish have been the key to it, and that will only get better for the next 6 weeks or so. So wintertime's here. Our water's clear. Slow it down. Take your time. Use a scented bait if you need to. But there's great fishing to be had in the wintertime. It's just a little bit different. It's been a lot of fun going around the state this week. I can't wait to do it again next week. And as always, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine Live, I'm Captain Rick Riles. Get your socks on, it's getting chilly, and I'll see you on the river.